Yes, the last few classes we learned about demography and subject related to population. We learned about the demographic process, demographic cycles, population policy, fertility, and then various family planning methods, contraceptive methods, and then population policy. And finally, we also learned about the National Family Welfare Program, which is the nerve center for the entire socio-economic development of the country. And I think myself and Dr. Kailash, both of us have taught you this subject. And this is a very important topic in the sense that you will get it a major question at least. Yes, you will definitely get a major question on that. And then, of course, you also get the small questions. Apart from that, unless and until you have learned the concept of what is fertility, what is demographic dividends, what is the dependent ratio, these are some of the important principles and concepts. If you learn these concepts, it will be very easy for you to answer any question, because we always cannot expect that we'll have a direct question from the question bank. Sometimes it will be tested in such a way that if you have the concept, you will be definitely in a position to write the examination. Now today, we will start another big chapter, that is preventive medicine in obstetrics, pediatrics, and geriatrics. This is very much related to our earlier topic, demography and population. Because here again, all those concepts what we have learned in that particular topic, again, some of them will be repeated here. If you see the population structure in the country, mother and children constitute about 70%. Children is below 14 years, constitute about 70% of the population. If you take only childbearing women, aged women, it will be something like 57%. Anyway, if you take care of mother and child, more than half of your job is over. More than half of the job is over. In fact, people said that the civilization of a country is dependent upon the concern it shows to the weaker population of the community. Who is the weaker population? Women and children. Ours is a great civilization. Once upon a time, never there is a difference between women and men. In fact, our religion, our culture, our practice is to pray Goddess Saraswati and Lakshmi for the prosperity and to victory over the wicked. We used to worship Parvati, and that was our culture. We never derivated or have a low opinion about the women. In fact, in the ancient period, there are two labor-intensive industries in our country. Number one, cultivation. Number two, cloth weaving. These two are the biggest, apart from many skill-based training programs and skill-based works. These two are the biggest industries where in every village, each person, irrespective of their sex, used to get some job in that particular activity, and there is no dearth of food. But unfortunately, this was affected because of the various foreign invasions from the Islam and British. Gradually, both the major industries were destroyed. The Islam, they have taken our sovereignty, but British has taken not only sovereignty, but also drained our wealth. You see, once upon a time, the GDP was something like 23 of our country, where we used to export clothes, food grains, excess to other countries at the time of independence. At the time of British leaving the country, we were not a poverty. The slave country and our GDP was just 2%. That was the situation. From such situation, today, our government tried to slowly bring up the earlier days, earlier prosperity. You see, today, government is taking a lot of interest in empowering women and many skill-based trainings and then self-employment schemes. Slowly we are giving importance to the particularly women. Now, when you see the death rate in developed countries, the 50% of deaths occur only after 70 years of age. Whereas the same percentage of deaths in our country are occurring in children less than 40 years. This is not correct. Because child should not die. Child mortality means it is wastage of nation. Because we spent a lot of money on the antenatal mothers and children. We have many national programs. In spite of all that, if children dies, our productivity is lost. And at the same time, old people also, they must be self-reliant. They should not become just the age, the disability adjusted life years, and they lie on the bed, and they are liable to the family as well as to community. So we also should take some interest and find ways and means to keep the old people also in a fit condition to the extent possible they are self-reliant. Then it will be safe for us. And another point is the maternal mortality rate. The maternal mortality rate in developed nations today, it is about 15 or 12 per thousand black live births. Whereas in our country, it is more than 130. We have been trying a lot for the last few decades to bring down the maternal mortality rate. It was something like more than 200 at the time of the Declaration of Health for All by 2000, way back in 1977. And of course, gradually we have tried, because there are no institutional deliveries. The main reason is home deliveries and maternal mortality. And slowly we are bringing them to institutions and see that the deliveries are conducted in the hospital, so that the maternal mortality rate can be controlled. And when of course, we also taking a lot of interest in infant. In fact, infant mortality is the most sensitive indicator, where it shows the sort of health programs and sort of hygiene and health of the people. It's very sensitive, just like a touching stone. When you know that infant mortality rate very low in a particular country, means that particular country is clean, sanitation is good, no communicable diseases. It shows that. So infant mortality rate is also very important. Way back in 1970s, it was something like 150. Today, we are planning for bringing it to below 30, but nearly just nearby we are coming. Nowadays, it is about 30 per 1,000 months. Then the other problem is since we are speaking about mother and children and preventive medicine, we should take mother and child as a single unit. The reason being, you see, the child depends upon mother. Even in the womb, from the conception itself, it will be taken something like 280 days in the womb. The child is there. It gets nutrition, oxygen, everything from the mother. And as soon as the child is delivered, of course, the child is again dependent on mother for breast milk, breast milk, and then baby body warmth. Warmth is very important. So the child is closely kept to the mother, sometimes in between or the chest in between, so that the child receives warmth from the mother and his temperature will be regulated. And also other advantages. Mother, when the child is suckling breast and taking breast milk, means she relieves of her breast engorgement. The child also, mother also feels very happy. There is a strong emotional bond between the mother and the child. In the latter days, a concept called rooming in. The child is just kept by the side of the mother in a cradle, and for a long time, the child will be with the mother while taking breast milk. And then the other times, when the child sleeps, of course, the child will be kept in the cradle. So, mother is the child's first teacher, and she develops a strong bond, emotional bond with the child. In unfortunate situations, if mother dies, what happens is child becomes alone. And in our country and communities, there is nobody to look after the child. At the most, the close relative of the deceased, maybe brother, like a maternal uncle. Such people may take the baby to their house and somehow they may rear the child. If the child is lucky enough, they survives. And of course, they cannot give the same importance as of their children. And usually they'll be put to use for household works, etc. And the child definitely knows. The child may not be able to express what is happening to him. Emotionally, he is not getting the happiness or concern from the mother and father. So definitely the child will emotionally be disturbed. And sometimes if there is nobody, after some time they will become street children. It's very dangerous when child becomes a street child. Government took some measures like building some night shelters for the children and the beggars as a social welfare measure. When I was working in the state government, we used to maintain night shelters. Children used to come to the shelter. I was there, I was seeing. They are given free accommodation and food. In spite of all these, they are not much interested in the night shelters. You see, they always prefer to go out, beg somewhere, and then steal something, and purchase whatever to their choice for eating, etc. And there are no emotions at all. All the emotions have become blunt. And such type of children will definitely become is social evil, they will become pickpockets, and then thieves, and then sometimes very dangerous to the community. Exactly, I do not remember. I saw one picture when I was working in Visakhapatnam. I regularly used to go to Hyderabad office in a this Volvo bus, a movie where a child, mother died, and the child was adopted by none other than the brother of her father, younger brother. And the child was there with the father, and after she becomes mature and then become an adolescent, very beautiful looking and then very attractive. That fellow, in spite of he being a father, started to extort her sexually. He used to harass her. With great difficulty, she came out of his clutches, and afterwards, she became a sort of psycho, and she developed hatred to the entire male sex, and slowly she started killing all the male members, whoever comes in her way, and whoever is liable. Actually, she used to select all the blind people and rich people, where nobody takes much interest in them. She used to go to them, talk sweetly, as she's loving them, as if she acts as doing a lot of social service to the public. And suddenly, at a particular moment, she was this one dire receipt of money, and otherwise she will be, her life will be at peril. And then expressing the same thing to that blind fellow, he says that when we both are one, where is the question of thinking about money? I have this much money, you take it and immediately pay the debts, etc. And after that, she used to kill that fellow. And again, search for another fellow. This was going on for a long time. Of course, ultimately, people could chase her, and she was caught and taken to court for judgment. And then she narrates everything to the judge. He took pity on her and said that, you see, this is what's called maternal deprivation syndrome. Maternal deprivation syndrome. Because of that, she became like this. So there's no punishment. You please admit her in mental hospital, psychiatric hospital. See that she gets cured of her illness. So that is the severest form of the maternal deprivation syndrome. Another thing is, though it is not very actively working today, we used to have postpartum, where the medical colleges were attached with 3 or 4 units of postpartum, where they used to adopt nearby slums and conducting family planning operations and promoting primary health care services and various services by counseling, various services that are available with the government. And for delivery, definitely physically be there with the mother and then bring her to the hospital where the mother is delivered. Then it is the correct time, which is the very captive audience at that particular time. Give a counselor to go for tubectomy operation. It will be very easy at this time. You get the operation done, you will be given some incentive also, etc. Then promote the tubectomy, the permanent methods of sterilization. So in the postnatal period, we used to have that type of benefit from the couple. In addition to this, yes, things are over, the child born, and after that, the child goes to pediatrician, the mother goes to obstetrician. And both the subjects are, they are clinical subjects, very skill-oriented subjects, working independently. Pediatrician has his own clinic separately, even in colleges, the department is separate. And then the gynecology department is separate. Both are skill-oriented, and most of the things. We don't say that you see, the conduct of delivery is definitely it is a skill. In fact, some of the women and even rarely some of the men also adore for their skill in safely conducting the delivery and the bringing out the baby. There are a lot of fame and money. Like that, pediatricians also, with great skill, they treat the child, and people thought that the child is going to die, but because of his efficiency and utilizing all his knowledge, intelligence, giving correct medicine, and then supportive care, ultimately the child survives. Okay. After this, it is okay. But the thing is, the child after some time dies because of some pneumonia, some diarrhea, some dreadful infection. And mother also dies. It's a maternal mortality. Why? She was delivered under very efficient hands, and the child was treated by a very efficient pediatrician. And both of them died. The reason being, both the pediatrician and the gynecologist, obstetrician, sit together and they discussed. They found certain facts. The facts are at the time of delivery, the obstetrician knows that mother is enemy. Mother is enemy. In spite of that, she keeps some blood ready for transfusion and somehow she delivers. But at the time of delivery, we don't know what is the mechanism. Why only anemic people develop postpartum hemorrhage? They will definitely have postpartum hemorrhage. Sometimes there may not be, the blood may not be corrected. But the job of the obstetrician is to see, just ask the mother to wait for 2 or 3 days, and when there is no problem, naturally the patient will be, the mother will be discharged. Otherwise, it is a problem for the mother, particularly in private services, to meet the expenses. And the doctor also, there are no beds vacant. And then she's fine, delivered, and she's normal at this time. And so whatever is due her, she collects money from the mother, and the mother is discharged. On the same line, the child is also, because he is all right, the child is discharged. And pediatrician definitely knows that the child is underweight. At the time of birth, it was only 2.8 kg. It has not come to the minimum weight of 3 kg. And we know that when there is low weight babies, they are susceptible for many infections. Many infections. If there's anemia, mother is susceptible for certain diseases. In addition to that, she may have HIV infection, she may have hepatitis B infection, and the child may have diarrhea, and sometimes infections like pneumonia, distant pneumonia, that too, pneumococcal bacteria, some of the gram-negative bacteria resistant to antibiotics. And sometimes even tuberculosis can infect the child. So the obstetrician and pediatrician sit together, they thought that it is beyond our capability. See, we should go beyond this, amidst the four walls, we should come out and go to the community, what is happening here. How far we are responsible for this. And who can help us? Definitely we cannot go into the community. See, you are a specialist, I am a specialist for a long time, studied, acquired skills, and whoever patient comes to our clinic or hospital, we will give excellent treatment, there's no doubt. But how to correct these particular predisposing factors? In that process, they made friendship with specialists in public health, that is community medicine specialists or public health, so-called public health specialists, and their team, entire team, in public health, paramedical workers, etc. Now, when discussing with them, it is learned that the health of the child begins from the time of conception. From the time of conception. You see, if the mother is anemic and less than 20 years or less than 18 years, her development itself is not completed. Bones, there are some bones which are still in the process of growth. How can she support another life from her body? It's not possible. So that's why the child, the female women should become pregnant only after 8 years, preferably after 20 years, so that she can support the child. That is a social factor which an obstetrician cannot command. You see, it needs a lot of health education, a lot of interaction with the community to convince them the various deleterious effects. The mother, the women conceives, become pregnant before 8 years, what are the various residual effects? So, for which, of course, in private setup, there is no any answer for this, but as far as the government is concerned, a lot of interest. They have developed maternity and child health services. Both the specialties brought under one umbrella, and today we have maternity child health services. See, when the adolescent girl, when she fit for the age of marriage, she is married and immediately she has been brought into the eligible couple register, and our staff, health staff, stop giving counseling to them to postpone pregnancy at least for 2 or 3 years to enjoy the marriage bliss, and then afterwards, of course, this short period also she supports them. She says that there are some temporary methods like using oral pills, condom, some more things. You can use them free of cost. Government is supplying. You take this and try to postpone the pregnancy. And like that, the pregnancy is postponed. After 20 years, she conceives. And again, there is gap between child and child. You see, during that period, the antenatal mother and the child gets nutritional supplementation from the government, from the Women and Child Department, the Anganwadi centers, where they provide free food and also some informal education to the child. And mother also gets some food supplementation. And of course, when the child comes to the 5th year, the primary education free. This right to education act as a fundamental right. Now, the child can will be provided free education, and then they do not pay any fees. Books are free, and then the midday meal school program, which is very interesting program where nutritive food is supplied. So this is all social obstacles, social obstacles. This does not comes under the clinician. So this particular activity is concerned with social and preventive medicine or community medicine specialists, because it's the community. Social and preventive medicine is an old term, but now we call it as the community medicine because we treat the community, not only the child and mother. We also see that study the family structure, whether it is a small family or how many members are there, what sort of house they are living, how much they are earning, what sort of goods they are purchasing, what sort of services they are getting from the government. If the house is overcrowded. So these are all the social factors which affect the child and mother. So after the first child, there will be the spacing, and they will have then the second child. Again, in the spacing, again they will follow the temporary methods. Or sometimes they can also go for intrauterine contraceptive device. And when they want the second child, the intrauterine contraceptive device is removed or oral pills will stop. It takes some time for mother to establish the cycle, ovarian cycle, and then become conceived and pregnant. So during which period our staff will definitely help the couple by giving sort of counseling, etc. So that is as far as the mother is concerned. And when we come to the child, you see there's lot more beyond the clinical pediatrics. Today, we have primary healthcare services where the child services, particularly prevention of communicable diseases, are integrated in the primary healthcare services. That means child gets started from the 0-dose immunization. He gets all the national immunization schedule against 9 diseases, BPT. And then now we have pentavalent vaccine, and then we have rotavirus vaccine, measles vaccine, vitamin A solution, all these things the child get. And the convincing the mother to see that the child gets all the immunizations as per the immunization schedule, as per the card provided by the health worker, it's very important. It needs a lot of motivation. It needs a lot of concern towards the mother. And we have gone to, government has gone to that extent as to track the mother and child. You see, as soon as the mother is registered, the eligible couple, she gets at least 2 injections of tetanus toxoid, and her due date will be given on so and so date, due date for you to take the tetanus vaccine. On the same note, children, the primary vaccine, 3 doses. If they have a cell phone, there will be the cell phone message in the next dose on so and so date, so and so time, at so and so place. So that is the way which the community medicine works. So the child is protected against all these community medicines. In addition to this, the child will get the supplementary nutrition program in the school. In villages, you see, the message should spread all the people, irrespective of their education, irrespective of their social status, irrespective of their literacy. You see, we have found at the level of village health and sanitation committee, where the ANM is the member, Anganwadi worker is the member, Panchayati president is a member, and then rural water supply scheme assistant engineer is a member. Like that, many more offices with social welfare, particularly because they distribute the old age pension, etc. So they are all the committee, the members of the health and sanitation committee, where they will spread this particular message. Once in a month, they will be meetings. All the village women, particularly, and men will be attending the meeting. They will get this particular information. So it is all social aspect, which has to be go through the public health specialty through its infrastructure and to its staff. This is what is called social pediatrics and social obstetrics. This cannot definitely be taken care of by the gynecologist or pediatrician. However much skill is there, whatever is their stature, they will be confined to the clinics. So in this particular aspect, community medicine is making ahead in the entire healthcare services from the government side. Now, what are the MCH problems now? MCH problems, maternity childhood problems. We should come to a concrete conclusion and identify objectively what are they and how to address them. If you learn this particular aspect, then we will go into the details of various services, antenatal services, internatal services, postnatal services, under 5 children health services, geriatric services. Our topic today, introduction, covers even geriatrics. We already talked about it. The dependency ratio, one part is old age people. As far as the children is concerned, see, we are controlling the fertility and control by number of ways, by providing primary health care services to the mother, providing nutrition, etc., and motivating the mothers to reduce the number of children and follow the small family norm, and providing a gamut of a number of immunizations to control the community diseases. But what about the old age people? We are talking about the geriatrics. In fact, the life expectancy in developed countries has gone even up to 80 years. 80 years. But they are not like us. You see, Ours is people live after 65 years, yes, but how? Some of them need kidney transplantation. Some of them need dialysis regularly. Some of them would be cerebrovascular accidents, and some of people cardiovascular diseases. Ultimately, what is happening is they are living, but they are burdened to the society and community. Our concept is to see that, just like in developed countries, they should live with minimum standards of health to look after themselves. They are not burdened to the family. What to do for this? They are all suffering from non-communicable diseases. The person crosses 65 means is entering into the dependent group and old age group. Definitely, when compared to the communicable diseases, the important is non-communicable diseases. We have successfully integrated primary health care services for the children, but not for the other dependent group, that is old age after 65. What happened is, at that time, they succumb to this non-communicable disease, they have become dependent. Do you know, we can also bring these primary health care services and integrated into the primary health care services, even for the non-communicable diseases. Tell me, what are the various non-communicable diseases? You have cancer, you have diabetes, you have hypertension, you have cerebral accidents, you have cardiovascular accidents, coronary heart disease, thyroid deficiency. These are all chronic diseases, but they are not developed just overnight. We all know that there are some risk factors involved in this particular non-communicable diseases. Risk factors in the shape of unhygienic health habits. You see, we smoke, we consume alcohol, we consume junk food, we consume all tobacco products, we use kinin, we use various drugs. Starting at the age of, at an younger age, and not able to get rid of them, because over a period of time you get psychological dependence, after that you get physical dependence, and if they are suddenly stopped, you will crave for them. Recently you have seen how when wine shops were open, people standing in long queues, etc. But this is because of the craving. This is because of the physical dependence on the particular thing. And also, you have metabolic risk factors like hypercholesterol, hyperglycemia, obesity, lack of exercise. These are all metabolic factors for which you have to conduct screening programs at much earlier age. You should not wait for 65 years, coming up to 65. You should start screening in the young age, so that if all the people who shows the tendency towards non-communicable diseases, in a sense, positive for the risk factors, all those people with hyperglycemia, all those people with hypercholesterolemia, high cholesterol level, and body mass index more than 2.8, 2.8 above, and such people, these are all nothing but risk factors. Can't you serve for these risk factors? Is it difficult thing to identify and integrate them in the public health, primary health care service itself? That's like giving immunization to the children. It's not difficult. somehow there is no commitment from the public health department and doctors. The attention which the non-communicable diseases should get, they are not getting. And it is wonder of wonders to speak about these risk factors integrating into the primary health care services, starting from the sub-center and primary health centers. Why? There is a perfect public health paramedical trained person is there. It's not a rocket science to improve their building their capacity for learning by giving little training to take the anthropometric measurements. Just like we are monitoring the child in the Anganwadi centers, growth monitoring, we have growth chart. We are at a glance, anybody, even illiterate person can just see the road to health card and say that yes, child is going in a correct growth and his milestones of development is going on very well. There's no problem. And in some cases where when it is not so, immediately pick up the child and go into the details and try to correct the things by referring to the secondary care, tertiary care, whatever it is necessary. On the same lines, our own paramedical public health personnel can be trained to identify these by questionnaire, just by observation. You see, today, our every village have an ASHA worker as a link between the people and public health department. She knows she is in charge of only just 1,000 population, and most of them are their relatives, their cousins, their sisters, their brothers. So she will be able to say that so and so person is unnecessarily consuming a lot of alcohol and is creating problem in the village, the family, and there is no proper nutrition, etc. And such person is having unhealthy lifestyle. And that person can be given counseling, take to the hospital and conduct some screening tests, his health status, function of the liver, etc. can be explained to him, and then you can say these are the diseases you are liable to die, or you are liable to become a dependent person on your family and community. And so you have to follow this particular path so that you come out. And regularly there is a follow-up from the health department side. Definitely there is chances of leaving that bad habit. Unfortunately, what is happening in our government is we are not taking such measures. We say that cigarette smoking and consumption of alcohol, vodka packets, kainik packets is dangerous to the human health. Okay. And suddenly one day they announced that from this day onwards we don't sell any of these habit-forming drugs. And suddenly they stop this. It is injustice. We should not do that. Because by that time, they are psychologically dependent. Some people are physically dependent. They will not get sleep. They will not even pass motion. They do not get sleep. They spend sleepless nights. And some people, because of the craving, what we should do is we should take pity on them first. And then start counseling. And there shall be some clinics for that. The doctor should interact with that particular person. And why some people genuinely want to leave its bad habits, but they do not know how to. And doctor, under the supervision of doctor, gradually we can withdraw the particular alcohol consumption habit by providing medication. And that medicine is not available outside because they are all phenothiazines and diazepam, etc., which are scheduled as they are not available outside. But if there is a counseling clinic run by a government department and they prescribe, definitely those drugs will be available. And they will also produce same happiness or same contentment or the same feeling after stopping the consumption of alcohol for some time. You see, then you have to taper the dose slowly. Beginning higher dose, then go for low dose. Then ultimately you will stop, and then regularly there shall be counseling. Now and then he will be again having the idea of again consuming alcohol or smoking. But if you regularly counsel, and many of the sort of people, we can arrange some place where they can meet and share their ideas, exchange. Yes, this is the thing I have stopped. My drug is slowly tapered. I am getting good sleep. I am playing, speaking to my children. My wife is very affectionate to me. And then I'm able to eat. When compared to previous days, I am healthy. I can do a lot of physical work. It's a successful story. See, the other people who are attending on that particular incident will get a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy by hearing that success story. So they will also try to follow the same path and try to promote. That is the way how we can control this chronic non-communicable diseases. Suddenly we cannot make anything. And I don't think even among the public health specialists, we can easily introduce and integrate these risk factors into the primary health care. And believe me, we have the primary health care structure, not only staff. We have the structure in such a way, every 5,000 population is having a sub-center. We have primary health center, we have a community health center, district headquarters hospital. It is such a beautiful arrangement. It is a beautiful infrastructure built by the government. And staff is there to man. Doctors are readily available. And these things, government should take the opinion of the public health specialists, and then they should go on these lines. First of all, for non-communicable diseases, all the risk factors shall be included in the integrated into the primary health care services, and those services shall be delivered from the sub-centers, from the primary health centers to the population, to the doorsteps, and then we are sure we have old people, elderly people with reasonable health and not dependent on anybody anymore. They are liable. And what are the medicines if they are required, if they need the control of hypertension, the control of diabetes? There is no need for them to go far off district hospital and then beg them to give the tablets. No. And there's an integration means in that particular sub-center or in the particular primary health center, the name of the patient, the house of the patient, the house number of the patient, the contact number of the patient shall be available with the primary health center staff, and see that they regularly use the antihypertensives so that they will never go into cerebrovascular accident. And today we have health and wellness centers under Ayushman Bharat, National Health Protection Scheme. What a wonderful idea it is, providing 5 lakh people, 5 lakh rupees to a family and its family members. For each year, they can use that particular amount for the entire family. What a wonderful idea it is. You see, if with these health and wellness centers, we take care of the elderly people and also younger generations in the house itself. Our country can be, world can be a beautiful place to live, and definitely will be productive and will be helpful in the growth of the economy and the development of our country. It is there in the hands of the public health specialists. And the younger generations like you who are going to become primary health care physicians as per the Graduate Medical Regulations 2018, competency-based education, medical curriculum, which is very essential for the treatment of rural population. So, try to make a concept out of this today's introductory lecture. And from next class onwards, we'll go into the details on the subjects. Myself and Dr. Kailash. Thank you. వచ్చేమ్మా అయిపోయింది వచ్చేయండి డాక్టర్ వచ్చేయండి Please go ahead.